London Bridge Station was forced to close as 70 firefighters tackled a massive blaze that broke out next to it. The fire disrupted all routes through the bridge, sparking travel chaos for thousands. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Nina Richie Alagao Flores, and this is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. President Marcos to reorganize the Sugar Regulatory Administration following the resignations of officials involved in the botched sugar importation. State of calamity declaration due to COVID-19 likely to be extended until the end of the year, according to President Marcos. North Korea fires 2 cruise missiles toward waters off its west coast, based on the South Korean Defense Ministry report. 7 injured following arson attacks and explosions in more than a dozen locations in Thailand's south. And UK inflation rate hits new 40-year high. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is set to reorganize the Sugar Regulatory Administration as the administration makes arrangements with industry stakeholders to address issues in sugar prices and supply. Eden Santos reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says he will reorganize the Sugar Regulatory Administration following the resignation of its officials over the botched importation of 300,000 metric tons of sugar. In an interview at the Pinas Lakas Booster campaign in a mall in Manila, President Marcos told reporters that the reorganization of SRA would be finished before the end of this week. Marcos said he was letting Congress probe the controversial Sugar Order No. 4, authorizing the importation which the palace labeled illegal.
Pinaubaya namin ang investigasyon sa House, sa legislature, and even the Senate. Dahil ang iniintindi ko lang talaga is that hindi tayo tumagal na meron tayong shortage ng sugar, lalong-lalo na para sa mga industrial consumer.
After reorganizing SRA, the president said he would make arrangements with the industry players. The president wants to find out how much the country has in terms of sugar supply and whether or not an importation is warranted at this time.
We will come to an arrangement with the industrial consumers, with the planters, the millers, as suppliers of the sugar to coordinate para talaga kung ano yung meron, kung ano yung available, mailabas na sa merkado. And yung kulang, kunin na natin, mag-import na tayo. Mapipilitan talaga tayo.
Marcos adds that he is in talks with traders and other stakeholders to stabilize the prices to 70 to 80 pesos per kilo from the current skyrocketing prices of more than 100 pesos per kilo.
That's exactly what we're negotiating now with the traders. Ang tinitingnan natin ay kung ano yung mga in-country na, nandito na hindi kailangan hindi na kailangan mag-import. Pero hindi talaga magkakakulang yan. So later on this year, that's what we are negotiating with the traders now. Hiningi natin, they first offered at 80 pesos. So sabi ko, hingin ko ng 70 pesos, tulungan niyo lang kasi kawawa naman ng tao. And we're getting there.
The importation controversy resulted in the resignation of 3 officials, including Agriculture Undersecretary Leocadio Sebastian, who signed the resolution on behalf of the President. SRA Administrator Hermenegildo Serafica and Sugar Board member Attorney Roland Beltran also resigned from their post. Eden Santos reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Senate will start its probe next week into the sugar importation issue and the anomalous procurement of overpriced laptops by the Procurement Service of the Department of Budget and Management, or PSDBM. Mayan Corvera has the details.
The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee has scheduled for Tuesday next week its investigation of the unauthorized order to import 300,000 metric tons of sugar. Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri said that before the importation got rejected by the President, the Sugar Regulatory Administration was able to import 200,000 metric tons of sugar last July, so he was wondering why there is a shortage in supply. Zubiri insisted that the issue be investigated due to allegations of officials benefiting from overpriced sacks of sugar amounting to 300 to 600 million pesos.
We tackle the privileged speech of the Honorable Senate President. I asked the consensus of the members of the committee if they are amenable to tackle this. This will be a long hearing on Tuesday. Make yourselves available and prepare and ask your staff to have the necessary documents secured from this committee.
Meanwhile, two resolutions were also pending before the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, submitted by Senators Alan Peter Cayetano and Aquilino Coco Pimentel. They were urging the Senate to investigate the procurement of overpriced but outdated laptops by the Department of Education. According to the senators, 28,000 public school teachers have not been issued laptops because the said gadget is very expensive. Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman Senator Francis Tolentino guaranteed that under his watch, there would be no political circus and fishing expedition at the committee hearings. He also appealed to his colleagues to avoid long hearings and respect the rights of resource persons. Tolentino reminded senators that their mandate is to make laws and it should be left to courts like the Ombudsman and Sandigan Bayan if there's a basis to charge any of the officials involved in the controversies.
We are not going for the guilt beyond reasonable doubt standard. That is the job of the prosecutors as well as the courts. Our job is to satisfy ourselves, to have that inner conviction, that moral certitude that a person appearing before this committee has committed a wrongdoing which would necessitate the filing of the appropriate charges.
Tolentino said the rules of the committee would stay, including the issuance of detention and commitment orders against resource persons who would not cooperate with the investigations. Under the detention order, whoever is cited for contempt will be detained within the premises of the Senate building, and if the committee issues a commitment order, the subject will be detained at the Pasay City Jail or New Bilibid Prison. Last 18 Congress, 3 were ordered detained by the Blue Ribbon Committee, including Police Major Rodney Baloyo, involved in the cops, as well as Lincoln Ong and Mohit Tarkani, both officials at the formerly pharmaceutical corporations involved in the alleged anomalous procurement of pandemic supplies. The committee has availed the services of 2 lawyers to assist, including former overall Deputy Ombudsman Melchor Carandang as legal consultant and former Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon, Gerald Mosquera, as General Counsel. Mosquera was the head of the PCGG's litigation department from 2010 to 2012, while Carandang led the investigation of the 728 million peso fertilizer fund scam under the administration of former President Gloria Arroyo. Mayan Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Leaders of the House of Representatives have urged President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to regularly convene a meeting of the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEDAC. House Speaker Martin Romualdez recognized the need for the 2 chambers of Congress and Malacanang to closely coordinate with each other to prevent a single presidential veto on bills to be approved by the 19th Congress. According to the House Speaker, Congress is ready to approve the priority bills President Marcos mentioned during his first State of the Nation address. These include priority measures for economic recovery and pro-people measures for the country's COVID-19 pandemic recovery. By getting his second booster shot today, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has set himself up as an example for the public to follow. The president says he is inclined to extend the validity of the state of public health emergency until the end of December. Vin Pascua has the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has received his second booster shot against COVID-19 at the Pinas Lakas Booster Campaign program of the Department of Health in Manila. President Marcos stressed the importance of getting a booster shot amid the emergence of new variants and the reopening of the country's economy. The chief executive hopes his inoculation would motivate the public to get boosted.
Para maging fully immunized ulit, ay kailangan magkaroon ng booster shot. Kaya ito ngayon ang kinakampanya namin na sana, lalong-lalo na dahang-dahang pabukas ang ekonomiya. Ayaw natin mag-lockdown. Gusto talaga natin matanggal na yung mask na protocol. Lahat yan, hindi natin maiaabot yan kung hindi tayo magpa-booster shot ngayon.
Ma'am, napakalaking karangalan naman ito ang mayor ng Manila.
The president, along with his son, Ilocos Norte Congressman Sandro Marcos, received a booster of Pfizer vaccine. Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergere administered the president's booster shot, while Manila Mayor Dr. Hani Lapunya Pangan did so to Kong Sandro Marcos. The president said Vergere had informed him that a specialized vaccine intended for Omicron subvariants would be available soon. Marcos said the government would study if the vaccine would be helpful before trying to purchase and add it to the booster program.
So that is why it is very important and it's very clear the benefits of having a booster shot now to combat the problem with the new variants of Omicron. Now, I was just told by Yusek Vergere, mukha namang meron ng ilalabas na vaccine para dito sa mga bagong variant ng Omicron. Kaya pag-aaralan natin, and if it is going to be helpful, gagawin natin ang lahat para madala rito sa Pilipinas, para mabigay natin sa lahat ng kailangan magkaroon ng booster shot.
Also at the Pinas Lakas Booster Shot campaign, President Marcos told the media that he was considering extending the state of public health emergency due to COVID-19 until the end of the year. Marcos said he was discussing with Vergere the assistance coming from the international medical community amid the state of emergency.
At kung itigil natin yung state of emergency, matitigil yun. But if we can change, we are looking at amending the law in terms of procurement and all of that in the middle of an emergency. But that will take time. So malamang we will extend it. We will extend it until the end of the year.
On Tuesday, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention classified the Philippines as a high-risk COVID-19 country, given the steady increase in infections. On the same day, the Department of Health recorded 2,633 new COVID-19 cases.
The local government of Manila has started dismantling quarantine facilities constructed in school compounds. This is to give way to the resumption of face-to-face classes. Madeline Villar Moratillo reports.
A few days before the official opening of classes in public schools, the Department of Public Engineering and Public Works of Manila has started disassembling quarantine facilities within public school premises. According to Aaron Tolentino, Information Officer of Manila Division of City Schools, 7 public schools were converted to quarantine facilities in Manila at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of such schools, Cayetano Arellano High School, had its covered court used as an isolation area. But since face-to-face classes will resume on Monday, only one school will remain as an isolation facility, the Bacood Elementary School in Santa Mesa, Manila.
Baka ina-anticipate na kung magkakaroon ng surge for COVID ay maaari pang magamit itong Bacood Elementary School. Kasi yung Bacolod Elementary School naman medyo malawak at saka meron siyang katabing school na separate ang gate na pwede pa niyang magamit for classes just in case na ongoing yung paggamit ng facility dun sa school na yun.
Tolentino assured the public that in case patients need to be admitted to the isolation facility, face-to-face classes may be suspended and students may continue their studies through the blended learning system. The division official also guaranteed that schools used as isolation facilities are safe to use because they underwent disinfection.
Halos isang taon nang wala talagang mga pasyente sa quarantine facility. So, yung kapangamba nila na baka may virus, hindi ito nagkaroon na ng pasyente. At saka, ang Manila Health Department ay lingguhan at periodic ang paglilinis at pagdidisinfect ng mga facilities.
Meanwhile, the Department of Health says it is no longer in favor of using school premises as quarantine facilities since the learners need to use the classrooms for their studies.
We do not support that schools be used as isolation and quarantine facilities anymore because unang-una, gagamitin na po ito ng ating mga mag-aaral para po sa pagbubukas ng eskwela. Pangalawa, since we already have allowed home quarantine, the need for this kind of outside or external quarantine and isolation facilities becomes less of importance for government. Ang kailangan po natin ngayon would be that we can adequately monitor all of these people doing home-based isolation and quarantine.
Madeline Villar Moratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
6 Philippine hospitals have received recognition from 2 international organizations. Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergeire said the Philippine Heart Center for the 3rd time received a diamond level status from the Accreditation Canada International in recognition of its exemplary performance in the field of quality medical services. On the other hand, the World Stroke Organization, or WSO, has awarded diamond status to Quirino Memorial Medical Center in Quezon City and Governor Celestino Gallares Memorial Medical Center in Tagbilaran City, Bohol. Vergeire added that the Angel Award Gold status of WSO was also given to Jose R. Reyes Memorial Medical Center in Manila, Corazon Locsin Montelibano Memorial Regional Center or Hospital in Bacolod City, Negros Occidental, and Northern Mindanao Medical Center in Cagayan de Oro City, Misamis Oriental. The Department of Foreign Affairs vows that existing relations with other countries will be strengthened under the Marcos administration. Moira Encina has the details.
The Department of Foreign Affairs is ready to deepen the country's relations with other countries. Secretary Enrique Manalo made the assurance in a get-together meeting with members of DFA Press Corps.
I'm also sure that you have many questions about the future of our foreign relations. President Marcos was quite clear in his State of the Nation address. We will continue to be a friend to all and enemy to none. And in the same vein, President Marcos was very clear that we will not abandon even 1 square inch of Philippine territory.
Aside from strengthening the country's bilateral relations, Manalo says the DFA, under the new leadership, is willing to build and cultivate new ties with other countries. Manalo further guarantees that the DFA will exert all diplomatic actions when it is proven that the country's sovereignty is being infringed upon. Meanwhile, at the meet and greet with the media, Manalo recognized the important role played by journalists as the department's partner in articulating the government's foreign policy with the public. Manalo is joined by the new DFA undersecretaries who are also all career diplomats.
It is your questions and your quest for clarity that truly sparks public discussions in our foreign relations. And even as we negotiate with foreign partners behind closed doors, your discourse helps us drive home that we are conducting our discussions with utmost candor and good faith. That is the beauty of a democratic society.
The Secretary announced that the department would not speak nor comment based on emotions nor in reaction to fake news. This is in accordance with President Marcos's wishes that the government's messaging must be coordinated and based on factual data.
Foreign policy is an aspect of statecraft that undergoes much scrutiny despite its oftentimes secretive nature. For sure, navigating our country's place in the world requires a delicate touch, especially as we always keep Philippine national interests foremost in mind. And the role of the media, especially in this day and age, impacts the work of the Department of Foreign Affairs constantly and in a direct manner.
Moira Encina reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Up next, North Korea fires cruise missiles as the U.S. and South Korea prepare for joint drills. Thailand's restive south rocked by a wave of arson and bombings. And Russian gas crisis sparks cold rush in Germany. Find out more when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Ang morning show na always nagbibigay ng ngiti at saya sa bawat kada all over the world. Tara na't ma-inspire at ma-amaze sa kwento ng mga bawat kada na nagwagi sa anumang hamon at pagsubok ng buhay. Itago na mga remote control at tumambay lang dito sa paborito niyong barkada sa umaga, ang Kada Umaga! Dahil kayo ang bida dito.
Classic, meron Alma Moreno Classics. Ang tawag dito, Alma Isms.
Ready na po ba kayong umorder?
Oo.
For dine-in po o to go?
For Vandal, for Jenny, and for me.
Matanong ko, no, more or less, ilang pelikula nang nagawa mo?
More.
More?
Mali ba? Less.
We now welcome you back with more global news. North Korea fired 2 cruise missiles Wednesday, ending a month-long lull in its record-breaking spate of weapons tests this year. Seoul's defense ministry said it detected Pyongyang's firing the cruise missiles from the west coast town of Oncheon. It was the first time since January that North Korea tested a cruise missile, a weapon not banned under the UN sanctions against the country. The U.S. and South Korean military authorities are still analyzing detailed specifications such as flight distance. Washington and Seoul officials have also warned that the isolated regime is preparing to carry out what would be its 7th nuclear test. Earlier this week, South Korean and American military troops kicked off preliminary drills ahead of the start of their combined ULC Freedom Shield exercise. The annual drills infuriate Pyongyang, which views them as a rehearsal for invasion. Arson attacks and explosions hit more than a dozen locations in Thailand's restive deep south, injuring 7 people. Officials said most of the targeted sites were convenience stores and petrol stations, all located in the provinces of Pattaya or Patani, Yala, and Narathiwat.
ใส่ของอยู่แล้วก็พนักงานขนส่งของเซเว่นก็มาถึงแล้วก็มีเสียงระเบิดแล้วก็หลังจากนั้นพวกนี้ก็หนีออกจากประตูข้างนอก
7 people were slightly injured in the incidents, a statement from the military said, while police said they were gathering CCTV footage and other evidence. According to authorities, the immediate motive for the wave of attacks was still unclear, since militants usually target symbols of the state and its security forces. The southern region, heavily policed by Thai security forces, is culturally distinct from Buddhist-majority Thailand. Delegations representing the Thai government and Barisan Revolusi National rebels met in Kuala Lumpur in January for their first in-person peace talks in about 2 years, though no breakthrough was reported. Since the insurgency reignited in January of 2004, more than 7,000 people have been killed and 13,500 others injured in Thailand's far south, according to Deep South Watch, a local think tank. A UN-chartered vessel laden with grain set off from Ukraine for Africa following a deal to relieve a global food crisis. The Infrastructure Ministry says the MV Brave Commander left the Black Sea port of Pivdenyi and will sail to Djibouti for delivery to Ethiopia. The ship is carrying 23,000 tons of wheat. It is the first ship chartered by the UN World Food Programme to leave Ukraine since February. Ukraine says it hopes 2 or 3 similar shipments will follow soon. Ukraine and Russia are 2 of the world's biggest grain exporters. Kyiv and Moscow agreed a deal brokered by the UN and Turkey last month to unblock Black Sea grain deliveries. The agreement lifted a Russian blockade of Ukraine's ports and established safe corridors through naval mines laid by Kyiv. In Germany, a looming shortage of Russian gas in the wake of the war in Ukraine has reignited enthusiasm for coal as a method of heating homes. This is despite of its sooty residue and heavy carbon footprint. With all the new private customers, coal production is struggling to keep up. Many small charcoal traders in Berlin have also nothing left to sell. With the rising gas prices in the country, Gene Blum says that he would use coal to have some long-lasting warmth at night. Blum admits that although using coal is unhealthy, it is still better than freezing at night. Fridtjof Egelke, a Berlin coal supplier, says that Germany has a short supply of coal because producers simply can't keep up with the demand. He also observes that suppliers are seeing a rush of new customers. Everyone has a gas heater at home, but also a stove now wants coal, says Egelke as winter quickly approaches his country. The black fuel is experiencing a comeback on several fronts in Europe's top economies, especially as the German government has already resolved to increase the use of coal-fueled power plants to satisfy the enormous appetites of several industries. But Berlin insists it will keep its vow to phase out the heavily polluting energy source by 2030 and rules out a renaissance of fossil fuels, in particular coal. UN Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet visited Rohingya camps in Bangladesh. She met with residents of the sprawling relief settlements, which house nearly 1 million ethnic Rohingya fleeing persecution in neighboring Myanmar.
All of them have said, we want to go back, but we want to go back when we have an identity as citizens of Myanmar, when our rights are respected, we can have our livelihoods again, and we can have a land, and we can feel they're part of a country.
Security in the camps has been a constant issue, with scores of murders, kidnappings, and police dragnets targeting drug trafficking networks. Bangladesh Refugee Commissioner Shah Rezwan Hayat told AFP News that Bachelet had asked about reports of violence in the camps, but added that all sorts of measures have been taken by the government to improve security. Bachelet said the UN is doing its best to support the residents of the Rohingya camps, but she emphasized the need to deal with the profound roots of the problem to ensure the refugees can go back to Myanmar, where there are conditions for a safe and voluntary return.
So I would insist that the international community don't abandon the Rohingyas and continue supporting and even looking at if they can even scale up their support because of the consequences of the war.
Noeline Hazer, UN's new special envoy for Myanmar, began meetings with top junta officials but did not respond to questions about whether she would seek to meet ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Hazer's visit to the crisis-racked country will focus on addressing the deteriorating situation and immediate concerns, as well as other priority areas of her mandate, according to the UN. Spokesman Zhao Min-tun in a press conference has confirmed that Hazer will also meet Chief Min Aung Hlaing. Though Zhao remained positive about the meeting's result, rights groups had little optimism that Hazer's visit would persuade the military to end its bloody crackdown and engage in dialogue with opponents of its coup. According to a local monitoring group, over 2,200 people have been killed and over 15,000 arrested in the military's crackdown on dissent. Last month, the junta triggered renewed international condemnation when it executed Phyo Zeya Tao for offenses under anti-terrorism laws. He was a former lawmaker from Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party. In a fiery press conference, former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison rejected calls for his resignation from the parliament. He faced a barrage of questions about why he failed to tell the public or even many of his fellow ministers that he was giving himself additional powers.
To basically ask for you to resign. Will you resign over this?
Well, of course not. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Well, I'm only aware of one colleague who's asked to do that. I'm not aware of any other colleague. I'm only aware of the member for McPherson asking for me to do that, who served in my cabinet. But these are actions and decisions I took as the Prime Minister. I'm no longer the Prime Minister. There is another Prime Minister. I was steering the ship in the middle of the tempest. So I appreciate that your perspective is different to mine, and I think that may explain.
Morrison strongly defended secret arrangements he made to swear himself into key portfolios, including defense and treasury. He said he only used the roles in emergencies such as the COVID-19 pandemic.
Did the Prime Minister take any additional payment for any of these things? Of course not.
Did the Prime Minister deceive his colleagues? Yes.
And the public.
The Prime Minister...
And the voters.
And to the extent that I've caused offence to my colleagues. No, I didn't disclose it to them.
Your colleagues.
I didn't disclose it to them because I didn't think it was in the interest of the best operations of the government during a crisis.
For generations and generations well into the future. Why is all that true? Because of the Great Barrier Reef. And as a government, what we have been doing throughout our term as a government, ensuring that we're...
Morrison said as the Prime Minister then, he had the authority to determine the responsibilities every single minister had, and those powers were exercised democratically. He added that he gained no personal advantage from being sworn in to administer 5 government portfolios. He also admitted that he used the powers to override his resources minister and block a controversial offshore gas project, a move he conceded was separate from the pandemic. As yet, it is not clear whether Morrison will face any political or legal fallout from the scandal. However, Australia's new Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has already asked the Solicitor General to advise on whether Morrison acted legally. The United Nations announces that Turkey leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan and UN Chief Antonio Guterres will meet President Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine on Thursday. Tuesday's announcement comes as Russia claims massive explosions at a military facility on the Kremlin-controlled Crimean Peninsula. While Kyiv reports an unprecedented cyber attack on its nuclear energy agency's website, which it says has been launched from Russia. UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric says Guterres, Erdogan, and Zelensky will meet in the western city of Lviv to discuss the need for a political solution to this conflict. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says he deplores violence and terror wherever it may be in the world. On a visit to Berlin for discussions with Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Abbas emphasizes the commitment and efforts of the Palestinian territories to achieve a two-state solution.
السيدات والسادة، لقد اطلعت سيادة المستشار على مسعانا لحماية حل الدولتين من الانهيار تمهيدا للذهاب إلى أفق سياسي ينهي الاحتلال لأرض دولة فلسطين على حدود 67. نحن نتمسك بالمقاومة الشعبية السلمية ولا نخرج عنها، ونرفض العنف والإرهاب في أي مكان في العالم.
Coming up, World Health Organization turns to the public to change monkeypox name. US CDC streamlines COVID-19 guidance. And massive fire blaze forced London Bridge Station to close. These and more news from around the world when Agila International returns.
Dahil ikaw lang o ikaw ang
Looking to rename monkeypox, the World Health Organization called for help from the public in coming up with a less stigmatizing designation for the fast-spreading disease. The UN Health Agency has for weeks voiced concern about the name of the disease that emerged onto the global stage in May. Experts warn the name can be stigmatizing to the primates it was named after, despite playing little role in its spread, and to the African continent that the animals are often associated with. Recently in Brazil, for instance, there have been reported cases of people attacking monkeys over disease fears. A UN spokeswoman said they really want to find a name that is not stigmatizing, and the consultation is now open to everyone through a dedicated website. Monkeypox was named after the monkeys kept for research in Denmark in 1958, but the disease is found in several animals, most frequently in rodents. In May, cases of the disease began spreading rapidly around the world, mainly among men who have sex with men. While the virus can jump from animals to humans, WHO experts insist the recent global spread is due to close contact transmission between humans. The UN Health Agency announced last week that a group of experts it had convened had already agreed on new names for monkeypox virus variants, or clades. The experts agreed to rename them using Roman numerals instead, calling them Clade 1 and Clade 2. A subvariant of Clade 2, now known as Clade 2b, is seen as the main culprit behind the ongoing global outbreak. A more specific set of guidelines has been released by U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention about what to do if you or someone you know has been exposed to or infected by COVID-19. Rosel Feria tells us more.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention streamlines its COVID-19 guidance to help people better understand their risk, how to protect themselves and others, what actions to take if exposed to COVID-19, and what actions to take if they are sick or test positive for the virus. The latest CDC recommendations include keeping up to date with vaccination. This helps protect people against serious illness, hospitalization, and death. The agency says it is important to stay up to date, especially as new vaccines become available. Instead of quarantining when you were exposed to COVID-19, wear a high-quality mask for 10 days and get tested on day 5. Regardless of vaccination status, you should isolate from others when you have COVID-19. You should also isolate if you are sick and suspect that you have COVID-19 but do not yet have test results. If your results are positive, follow CDC's full isolation recommendations. If your results are negative, you can end your isolation. If you test positive for COVID-19, you stay home for at least 5 days and isolate from others in your home. You are most likely infectious during these first 5 days. If after 5 days you are fever-free for 24 hours without the use of medication and your symptoms are improving or you never had symptoms, you may end isolation after day 5. Regardless of when you end your isolation, avoid being around people who are more likely to get very sick from COVID-19 until at least day 11. You should wear a high-quality mask through day 10. In the U.S., the daily average of new hospitalization admissions due to COVID-19 is at 5,377. Current hospitalizations in the country is at 15,347. For more on the updates, visit cdc.gov. Rosel Feria, Washington, D.C., Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The European Union and the United States are studying Iran's response to a final draft agreement on reviving a 2015 nuclear accord with major powers. The U.S. said that it was informing EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell of its response to the text he submitted on August 8. The possibility of a deal which might lead to the lifting of U.S. sanctions on Iran's oil output of 2.5 million barrels per day has already helped trigger a fall in prices on world markets, with U.S. oil futures dropping nearly 3% to finish below $90 a barrel. A spokesperson for Borrell coordinated talks to bring Iran and the United States back into the deal. He said the Iranian response was received late and the EU was consulting with the U.S. and the other parties on the way ahead. Nabila Masrali says this is not the time to speculate on timing. Spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, Ned Price, says the U.S. is sharing its views with the EU.
Well, some of you have heard this from us already today, but we have in fact received Iran's comments on the EU's proposed final text. We have received them through the EU. We're in the process of studying them. We are at the same time engaged in consultations with the EU and our European allies on the way ahead.
Iran's official IRNA news agency reported earlier that an agreement will be concluded if the United States reacts with realism and flexibility to Iran's response. U.S. President Joe Biden signs into law a big climate change and health care spending bill. The law, dubbed the Inflation Reduction Act, has been touted by the White House as the biggest commitment to mitigating climate change in U.S. history. It also targets long-sought changes in the way medicines are priced and adds fairness to the tax system, with a minimum 15% tax for corporations.
And I'm about to sign the Inflation Reduction Act into law, one of the most significant laws in our history. Let me say from the start, with this law, the American people won and the special interests lost. The American people look forward, and today offers further proof that the soul of America is vibrant, the future of America is bright, and the promise of America is real and just beginning.
Under the plan, the government will spend about $370 billion on green energy initiatives, while also allowing the state-run Medicare system to negotiate prices for prescription drugs, something expected to cut sharply into the often ruinous prices Americans are forced to pay. To pay for this, the law will close tax loopholes and enforce a 15% minimum tax on corporations, generating hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue. This is a measure Biden has long promised to his base as a way to get the wealthy to pay part of their fair share. A huge fire has forced London Bridge Station to close, causing travel chaos for thousands of commuters. More than 75 firefighters and 10 fire engines are tackling the two separate blazes near the bridge. London Fire Brigade Station Commander Wayne Johnson said the blaze is producing heavy smoke and those living or working in the local area are advised to keep their windows and doors closed. Trains to and from London Bridge are affected and several buildings have been evacuated. According to reports, a major fire in the railway arches on Union Street, Southwark, was reported. Another 3 fire crews are at London Bridge Station, where a smaller fire has also broken out, causing heavy smoke. Network Rail said 4 rail lines had been closed, while part of the Jubilee line on the tube was also suspended. The cause of the fire is as yet unknown, but crews continue to work to make the area safe. Water supplies to some U.S. states and Mexico will be cut to avoid a catastrophic collapse of the Colorado River, Washington officials said as a historic drought bites. More than 2 decades of well below average rainfall have left the river, the lifeblood of the western U.S., at critical levels as human-caused climate change worsens the natural drought cycle. The Colorado River rises in the Rocky Mountains and snakes its way through Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, California, and northern Mexico, where it empties into the Gulf of California. The states that use the water have been locked in negotiations over how to slash usage, but missed the Monday deadline to cut a deal, so Washington stepped in. Arizona's allocation from the river will fall by 21% in 2023, while Nevada will get 8% less. Mexico's allotment will drop by 7%. California, the biggest user of the river's water and the most populous of the western states, will not be affected. Meanwhile, officials in upstream states head out at what they saw as an unfair settlement since California is exempted from any cuts. Up next, UK inflation hits 40-year high. Qatar's Lusail Stadium is ready to host the World Cup. And a mischievous monkey dials 911. Mata ng Agila International will be right back after this short break.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
NASA's Artemis 1 moon rocket is slowly rolled out aboard a giant crawler vehicle to a launch pad ahead of its planned lunar mission. Artemis 1, an uncrewed test flight, will feature the first blastoff of the massive Space Launch System rocket, which will be the most powerful in the world when it goes into operation. It will propel the Orion crew capsule into orbit around the moon. The spacecraft will also remain in space for 42 days before returning to Earth. For the duration of Artemis 1, a team of about a dozen NASA personnel will remain in mission control 24 hours a day. The center has been renovated and updated for the occasion.
The most important part of this whole mission is to make sure that when this capsule hits the Earth, goes into the atmosphere at 11 kilometers per second for your European audience, that the heat shield holds. And then when we have that test point, then we'll be ready to put people on the vehicle.
Teams have been rehearsing for this moment for 3 years as NASA targets that from 2024, astronauts will travel aboard Orion for the same trip. And the following year, at the earliest, Americans will once again step foot on the moon. British inflation surged to a new 40-year high in July on rising food prices, official data showed, adding to a cost of living crisis as the country faces the prospect of recession. The Consumer Price Index accelerated to 10.1% last month from a 9.4% in June, a 40-year record at the time, according to the Office of National Statistics. The Bank of England warned earlier this month that inflation will climb to just over 13% this year, the highest level since 1980. It also projected that the country would enter a recession that would last until late 2023, with official data last week showing Britain's economy shrank in the second quarter. Britain is facing a cost of living crisis, with wage values falling at a record pace. The deteriorating economy will be inherited by Prime Minister Boris Johnson's successor after he leaves office next month, with fellow Conservatives Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak vying to take the reins. The central bank raised its key rate by 0.50 percentage points to 1.75% at its last policy meeting, the biggest hike since 1995. Argentines just might experience a shortage of coffee and salami. A sharp reduction in international reserves and increasing difficulties to import brought about a shortage of dollars. The resulting exchange rate crisis has left Argentines wondering whether their daily habits are at risk. Cafe owner Agustina Roman is an optimist. She says she believes shortages will not happen, but there is a need to care greatly for raw materials to secure supply. The general manager of the Chamber of Importers of the Argentine Republic says the situation could be compensated with more exports and other types of measures. However, he says the country does not have these in force at present, and that causes the central bank reserves to decrease drastically. Qatar's Lusail Stadium, the venue for the 2022 World Cup final, is ready ahead of its official inauguration on September 9. The stadium's project manager, Tamim El Abed, says although people will see concrete and asphalt and might think it is not ready, it is. He says all of the dress-up comes toward the later stages, and just before the tournament, the celebratory atmosphere will be felt. Elon Musk, the world's richest person, tweeted that he was joking when he said he was going to buy the English football club Manchester United. No, this is a long-running joke on Twitter. I'm not buying any sports teams, Musk said when asked by a user if he was serious about buying the club. The tweet turnaround comes as Musk seeks to exit a $44 billion agreement to buy Twitter for only 4 months after announcing on the platform he would buy the social media company. Musk has a history of being unconventional and posting irreverent tweets, making it difficult sometimes to tell when he is joking. Musk's tweets about potential acquisitions have landed him in hot water with his regulators, or U.S. regulators. Manchester United is one of the most famous names in world football, but is currently in crisis on the field amid angry calls from fans for the club's current owners, the American Glazer family, to pull out. The Northern England-based team has more than 32 million followers on its main Twitter account, and Musk's first tweet about the club had garnered nearly 400,000 likes on the platform within 4 hours. California cops rushed to a zoo after a 911 call, only to find out it had been placed by a mischievous monkey. Dispatchers sent officers to investigate a possible emergency after receiving a call that had disconnected. Tracing the call to Zoo to You, a conservation park north of Los Angeles, sheriff's deputies in San Luis Obispo County said they couldn't find any humans in trouble. To get to the bottom of the mystery, the sheriff's office began to investigate. On a social media post by a sheriff, it was revealed that the emergency call has been routed to the capuchin monkey. Capuchins are particularly inquisitive creatures who enjoy poking and pressing objects they pick up. The alarming coincidence made by capuchin in pressing the right combination to call 911 called everybody's attention. Here are some historical events that happened on this day, August 17. In 1898, Dr. Jose Rizal's remains were exhumed from Paco Cemetery and transferred to his family home in Binondo, Manila. At present, it is kept at the base of the monument built in his memory at Luneta Park. His statue carries the inscription, "I want to show to those who deprive people the right to love of country, that when we know how to sacrifice ourselves for our duties and convictions, death does not matter if one dies for those one loves, for his country and for others dear to him." In 1943, Robert De Niro was born in New York, New York. The American actor is known for his portrayals of violent characters and, later on, his depictions of cranky old men. In particular, De Niro's brilliant take on the part of young Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2 earned him a Best Supporting Actor Oscar and made him an international star. And in 1945, Indonesia announced its independence from the Netherlands. 4 years of armed and diplomatic struggle followed before the Dutch finally recognized the country's independence. Now, Indonesia is the world's 4th most populous nation and 3rd largest democracy. For For your midweek motivation, here is a quote from American businessman David Sarnoff. The will to persevere is often the difference between failure and success. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. This is Nina Richie Alago Flores for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.